Welcome to my study. This is where I do a lot of my writing. I've been invited to talk to you today and share a little bit about what's gone into a recent project that I've been working on. It was about 15 years ago that I wrote a book called The Torah Story that introduces the Torah for Christians. And the book's done well, and I've been asked to work on a second edition, and I've just been finishing it up here in the last while. Worked on it for a couple of years. And there's been many changes that needed to go into the second edition, thorough rewrite in many ways because of all the discoveries and new advances in studies on Torah, but that's not what I want to focus on. There's been some dramatic shifts that have affected students, and so I'd like to focus on some of the changes that have come into the situation of students. More than ever, our times have pushed back against Christianity. And there's many people that regard the idea that Christians hate people as one way to characterize what's going on. And many people are willing to say that the God of Christians hates people. And why do they say this? They say this for some of the things that are written in Torah. Many people don't like what the Torah has to say about God choosing one set of people and commanding them to devote the nations of Canaan to destruction. Another area of challenge that many people push back at is this idea of sexual purity that the scriptures call for. Let me just mention both of those briefly. Now, I understand that people push back at the idea of the law of the devotion of the nations of Canaan. This is a tough law. God really took the righteousness of Israel and the danger that they were in by being among the others very seriously. But one thing that is often missed, and this is very important, is it's not enough to just lift this law out of context. Torah assures us that when Israel rebels against the Lord is going to treat them in exactly the same way that he is using Israel to treat the nations of Canaan. And it's important for us to look in context so that we can see how God is toward Israel. And that takes some study. This other area of sexual purity, well, this is one that's really gotten a lot of press. And I understand why some of the things that are said. Because unfortunately, in days gone by, Christians have been especially guilty as treating some sins worse than other sins. But we need today, more than ever, to look at what Torah says. Torah doesn't look at sexual purity as these sins are worse than those sins. There's a common standard and a call for righteousness. And there's no playing favorites. The same God is the one God, and he holds all of these sexual sins to the same level. Well, all of this to say, there's a need for us today to take a look at some of the passages that have been passed by. We can no longer use the answers that didn't work yesterday for today's questions. We live in a day of serious problems that need serious answers. And so, second edition of Torah Story is one attempt to help students to get engaged, not with the stereotypes and the caricatures and the things that people say, but to read Torah for the students themselves, to study it for ourselves and see if some of the things that are said about Christians and the God of Christians, if they're viable. And I think students should study the scriptures because there's nothing to be afraid of. For it's through the study of Torah itself that can give us a pathway, if you will, to live out the gospel that starts in Torah.